Later, in the heart of the cursed forest, an ogre launched its axe at him, causing the ground to shatter upon impact. However, he agilely dodged the attack and taunted the ogre for being too slow. In response, he struck the ogre with a powerful punch, causing its head to explode. He quickly took cover as the ogre's lifeless body collapsed. He called out to the others to come out, and a swarm of ogres emerged from hiding, shouting that he was a strong human they needed to eliminate. The ogre leader rallied its kind, ordering them to charge towards him. The ogres charged simultaneously, but he confidently positioned himself and invited them to face him, ready to take on the challenges of the cursed forest. He reflected that the cursed forest was known as God's domain, signifying the entire city of Mia. In this city, players were protected. They received healing if injured, and resurrection if they died, making it the ultimate sanctuary for adventurers. Within the cursed forest, the blessing only extended to monsters, causing their numbers to remain constant even after they were defeated. Humans couldn't be revived in the cursed forest, and were unable to carry items obtained from hunting monsters outside its boundaries. Any items taken beyond the forest would turn to ashes and disappear, emphasizing the prohibition of touching the god's property. However, this restriction didn't apply to players, who could transport items acquired from monsters outside the forest with the system's assistance. In the midst of battle, Philip questioned why Jake was talking when their young master was the one engaging the ogres. Meanwhile, he was busy fighting the ogres, and as only the leader remained, it asked the leader about the power he had demonstrated. He raised the weapons on the ground using his psychokinetic abilities, causing them to fly toward the ogre leader. The ogre leader met a gruesome end, as it was sliced into pieces by the weapons. He explained to Philip that this power was called psychokinesis. Jake commented on the convenience of this ability, but Philip hushed him, instructing him to continue skinning the ogres. Jake expressed his dissatisfaction, explaining that he hadn't traveled all the way to Mia for such tasks. He suggested that they had made good progress through their training. He called over to him while he collected the ogre's blood and laughingly thanked everyone for their assistance, acknowledging that their collective efforts had made them stronger. Philip recalled how Raoul had used the skill books to swiftly learn a new skill. Raoul explained that this was precisely why he had chosen skill books over power armor. Philip marveled at Raoul's quick acquisition of a new skill, wondering how he had discovered this unique ability. However, his attention was diverted when the system displayed a guild chat, surprising him with a message from someone. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Magic or guns? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap. He urgently urged Raoul to check the guild chat, and when Raoul did, both of them fumed with anger. They decided it was time to return to Mia immediately. Back in Mia, at their apartment, tension escalated as someone brandished a sword, threatening one of Raoul's men, asserting that they should have taken action earlier. The individual stabbed Raoul's man with the sword, citing the difficulty of restraining themselves upon seeing Ashton's children wandering around. Another man, holding a bloodied sword, referred to the first man as his brother and lamented that they should have heeded his advice earlier, insinuating that they could have acted sooner. He stabbed another of Raoul's men while making this comment. Confused by the sudden attack, one of Raoul's men asked them why they were doing this, but another attacker slashed him with a sword, questioning whether their great-grandfather hadn't advised them to be cautious. He reminded them that they were all there because they had caused a scene. The man named Ron was Randall Sixth Count's first son. The man named Jerry was Randall Sixth County's second son. And the man named Cale was Randall Sixth County's third son. Raoul's injured man, lying on the ground, warned Ron that they would regret their actions. However, before the man could finish his words, Ron stabbed him and swiftly withdrew the sword, causing the man to cry out in pain. Ron continued to stab the man repeatedly, laughing and urging him to convey a message to Raoul to hurry up, as they had unfinished business with their young master. Ron remarked on the strangeness of their enemies continually reviving, glancing at the wounded man who was gradually healing on the ground and addressing them as bastards. Jerry jokingly suggested they deal with Raoul in a similar manner. Cale, however, reminded Jerry that noble families weren't supposed to point swords at each other within the free city. Ron challenged Cale, asking what difference it would make when they could simply deny their actions. He pondered what their course of action should be, adding that they might as well obliterate the Ashton family. Excited, he turned to his brothers, suggesting that their great-grandfather might even compliment them. However, just as he spoke, Ashton's head exploded into pieces, abruptly ending the conversation in a gruesome fashion. Cale called out to his brothers in shock, and they turned to see Raoul standing there, sternly questioning how they dared to commit such an offense against Ashton County. He warned them that they would have to pay for their actions with more than just their lives. The brothers looked at Raoul in surprise, with Jerry accusing him of madness and daring to lay hands on a son of the Randall family. Cale inquired about the whereabouts of the knights and how Raoul had even arrived there. One of the knights, with a sword pointed at his neck, fearfully replied that they had assumed they were the main force of the Ashton family. Philip and Jake had their swords trained on the brothers as well. Philip reported to Raoul that they had successfully surrounded the Randall Knights as instructed and ensured there were no civilians nearby. Bernard and Jake stood in silence, focused on the enemy. Raoul commended Philip and Jake for their excellent work. Then, using his psychokinesis, he carefully lifted his injured men into the air. He ordered Bernard to take them to the shrine, to which Bernard respectfully agreed. Raoul then opened his inventory, drawing his sword, and declared that he would deal with the intruders personally. He knew that Randall 6 County was akin to Ashton County, both being among the 5 warrior families of the Reuben Kingdom. However, unlike the long-standing history of the Ashton family, the Randall family had a shorter lineage. The 4 warrior families had been reorganized into the 5 warrior families when the current head of the Randall family, Count Hudson D. Randall, reached the Swordmaster stage. With their shorter history, the Randall family had to employ various strategies to secure their position, consistently producing exceptional knights, making valuable contributions, and asserting dominance over their rivals. The target of their aggression was the weakened Ashton County, which had not produced a swordmaster in a considerable period. Given the numerous swordmasters within Randall 6 County, there were minimal risks in provoking their rivals. Many conflicts between the 2 families throughout the kingdom's history had been initiated by the Randall family. People generally expected Randall 6 County to prevail, considering their abundance of swordmasters. Jerry, intrigued by Raoul's unusual strength, noticed him pull a sword seemingly out of thin air, further deepening the mystery surrounding their formidable adversary. The knight behind him, who had a sword pointed at him by Philip, cautiously reached for his own weapon. However, Raoul sensed the movement in time and swiftly turned around, swinging his sword and striking the knight. The knight let out a cry of pain, leaving the Randall Knights in shock. Jake, seeing Raoul's determination to handle the situation personally, resheathed his sword and instructed his men to lower their weapons. One of the Randall's strong knights couldn't comprehend why they were putting away their swords and questioned their sanity, considering it better to confront them. Kale, fueled by anger, charged toward Raoul, swinging his massive mace backward to gather momentum. Raoul admonished him, asserting that this wasn't a mere training exercise. However, just as Kale prepared to unleash his attack, a sharp sword slash swiftly approached him. Before he could strike, Kale cried out in agony as he was cleaved in half. Jerry called out Kale's name in distress and scolded the Randall Knights, labeling them as bastards and questioning their inaction. The leader among the Randall Knights expressed his frustration and reluctantly drew his sword. He explained that he had hesitated because he didn't want to appear as if he were bullying a 15-year-old boy, but with his comrades falling, it was no longer acceptable. The system displayed the man's name as Jeremy, a 37-year-old at level 65, holding the class of Leader of Guard Knights and a beginner sword expert. His affiliations were with Randall 6th County and Randall Knights. Jeremy possessed a Grade B potential talent, with stats including 66 for strength, 72 for agility, 68 for stamina, 48 for intelligence, 63 for willpower, 70 for mana, 55 for senses, and a unique trait labeled as brutality with a grade of C. The other knights also raised their swords, targeting Raoul. Raoul recognized Jeremy as the Randall family's primary asset, referred to as the rapier. He surmised that these men were the elites among Randall's knights. Jeremy and the knights remained poised with their swords aimed at him, understanding that he couldn't win against them in a straightforward battle. Given his current level of 45, he faced a predicament. One of the knights questioned why he didn't stop now, as they had initially let him be. The other knight declared that they could no longer allow him to continue. Undeterred, Raoul suddenly appeared in front of one of the knights, surprising him. With a swift strike, he slashed the knight's abdomen, causing him to bleed and cry out in pain. Jeremy, however, leaped toward Raoul, swiftly closing the distance to launch an attack. Raoul managed to block Jeremy's assault in the nick of time, but was pushed back by the force of the blow. Jeremy expressed disbelief that 2 of his elite knights had fallen so easily. Raoul recalled that he had heard rumors of his own weakness and ignorance in swordsmanship, but Jeremy's perception of him seemed to differ as he drew out another weapon. Jeremy pointed both his sword and a parrying dagger at Raoul, signaling his intent to take the fight seriously. Raoul confidently directed his sword toward Jeremy, challenging him to engage in combat. He observed that Jeremy was wielding a parrying dagger and a rapier, leading him to wonder if Jeremy was employing Randall 6 County's sword skill, known as Shooting Star. Jeremy smiled at Raoul's bravery and inquired if he was aware that all wounds healed in Mia. He suggested that Raoul couldn't take on all of them alone. However, Raoul confidently responded that he believed Jeremy was the one who was confused, betting that he and his knights hadn't trained since arriving in Mia. This revelation surprised Jeremy, who asked how Raoul had discerned this information. Raoul pointed out that the soldiers standing nearby, trembling even after their wounds had healed, were evidence that they were not accustomed to death. Jeremy sensed that Raoul possessed not only combat knowledge, but also the ability to perceive deeply, making him a significant threat. He instructed his man to provide cover from behind, and the man assured Jeremy that he had it under control. Jeremy then leapt into action, hurling his sword toward Raoul. Raoul shielded himself with his own sword as Jeremy and his companion continued their relentless assault, landing strikes on Raoul's face, arms, and various body parts. At a strategic moment, the man rushed forward to attack Raoul, surprising Jeremy, who shouted for his companion to stop. However, Raoul swung his sword forward, bisecting the man in an instant. Jeremy berated his fallen companion as a fool, but realized that there was no time to waste. He activated his Randall sword vision skill and unleashed the shooting star skill, a formidable technique known for its one-on-one combat prowess. Although Raoul struggled, even with his psychokinesis, he resolved to persevere. Raoul recognized that he was struggling in the battle, even though he had the upper hand. He planned to push Jeremy back relentlessly, glaring at his opponent, which infuriated Jeremy. The heated exchange continued, with Jeremy shouting at Raoul about his arrogant demeanor. Raoul responded with 100%, leaving Jeremy bewildered. Raoul swiftly swung his sword forward, causing Jeremy to involuntarily release his weapons into the air. Capitalizing on this opportunity, Raoul drove his sword into the ground. The system indicated that the skill examination was 100% complete, and the copycat was ready for use. The system instructed Raoul to copy the exact moves using the copycat to engrave the skill into the dex. Raoul employed his psychokinesis to snatch Jeremy's weapons out of the air. Astonishing Jeremy, the weapons flew directly into Raoul's hands, and the system guided him to activate the copycat with the Randall sword skill, Shooting Star, at grade B. Angrily, Raoul activated the skill while pointing Jeremy's weapons at him. The Shooting Star skill retaliated against Jeremy, who exclaimed in shock, questioning how Raoul had executed it. Jeremy shielded himself with his arms, enduring the painful onslaught of the Shooting Star skill, shouting and demanding to know who had betrayed them and taught Raoul this sword skill. Raoul, relentlessly attacking, suddenly appeared beneath Jeremy and calmly asserted that he had taught himself. This left Jeremy deeply confused, prompting him to ask what Raoul meant by that statement. After successfully engraving the Randall sword skill, Shooting Star at grade B, into his skill dex, Raoul looked at the kneeling Jeremy, believing the battle to be over. He found using the rank S skill, Copycat, to be challenging due to its overpowered nature. Copycat allowed him to copy one skill at a time from an opponent, but he couldn't lose sight of the target once the skill was activated. Losing sight of the target would reset the examination rate, which was why he had endured Jeremy's attacks without blinking. Raoul opened his display skill, revealing his current skill slots. He had 1. Ashton Vision Sworded skill, grade A+ at intermediate level 2. 2. Psychokinesis, grade S at intermediate level 2. 3. Ash and Mind skill, grade A at intermediate level 1. 4. Copycat, grade S at beginner level 6. 5. Basic meditation, grade E at beginner level 8. Additionally, he had skill deck select slots. 1. Flash, grade C at beginner level 6. 2. Shield, grade C at beginner level 6, and a skill dex random slot. Iron Fist, grade D at intermediate level 1. Raoul appreciated his skill dex, which allowed him to use 3 more skills. The selection slots enabled him to freely use 2 skills registered in the skill dex. He decided to use the newly acquired Randall sword skill, Shooting Star, in one of the skill deck selection slots. However, he heard something by his side, prompting him to look in that direction. Jerry, the remaining enemy, fearfully questioned Raoul's identity and how he had used the Randall sword skill. Raoul calmly replied that he had forgotten about Jerry. He ordered Philip to ensure that the enemies were killed each time they revived for an hour. Philip respectfully acknowledged the order and instructed his men to carry out their young master's command. Jerry, overwhelmed with fear, begged Philip for forgiveness, but Philip only stared at the enemy. Raoul realized that this was not a game, but the harsh reality before him. He knew he had to maintain his composure, even if it meant wading through a pool of blood. Raoul was determined not to lose control of the situation again, recognizing the gravity of the reality he faced. While Raldo watched the chaotic scene from a distance, he couldn't help but wonder what was happening. According to his plan, when the Randall Vionas attacked Raoul, he was supposed to step in and mobilize the guards to assist. However, Raoul had managed to defeat 15 knights on his own, leaving Raldo in a state of panic. He questioned how Raoul had discovered his presence and contemplated whether Raoul was more than just a wealthy and handsome noble. If Raoul had a hidden swordmaster from Ashton County, it would mean that Raoul had likely uncovered all of Raldo's plans. Raldo realized that he would need to establish a friendly relationship with Ashton County in the future. After a few minutes, Raldo was in his room, reflecting on the situation. He admitted to himself that he had gone a bit too far, but the rewards had been enticing. The system displayed the results of his sudden quest, Our Family Challenge, indicating that his rescue and punishment objectives were complete. He received a reward of 30,000 experience points, 5,000 coins, and a random B-grade skillbook draw ticket. Additionally, he acquired about 5,000 gold, a space-expanding magic bag capable of holding a carriage's worth of luggage, and a unique grade rapier and main go set from the Randall County individuals he had dealt with. Raldo was particularly intrigued by the B-grade skillbook draw ticket, hoping that he hadn't received only flunk rewards from the tournament skillbook rewards. He placed the ticket on the table and expressed his desire for at least a mid-tier skillbook this time. Breaking the ticket in half, he was pleasantly surprised to find that he had acquired a skill book called Rivera Spearman's Ship at grade B. This discovery filled him with happiness, as he knew that spearmanship was a necessary skill for various endeavors. Raoul continued his training in the forest, relentlessly attacking the ogres in front of him. As he fought, he wiped the sweat from his brow, and the system notified him that he had reached level 51. He also met the level requirements for a potential promotion, and needed to decide on his next job advancement. The system confirmed his job as a sword user and his beginner psychokinetic abilities, indicating that his proficiency in job-related skills, such as Ashton family hereditary swordsmanship, Randall swordsmanship, and psychokinesis, had all increased to mid-level 2. This meant that his job title would change from sword user to sword expert, and his beginner psychokinetic abilities would advance to intermediate psychokinetic. Philip and Jake were amazed at Raoul's progress. Jake, in particular, was impressed that Raoul had become a sword expert at the young age of 15. Raoul raised his hand in the air, causing the stones on the ground to float. With a shout, he directed the stones to strike a massive tree, shattering it into pieces. He then pulled out his sword, leaped forward, and activated his bear strike, causing the ground to shatter as well. After witnessing this display of power, Philip and Jake praised Raoul for his abilities. Philip thought it was wonderful, while Jake playfully asked if Raoul could do it all without them. However, Philip immediately grabbed Jake's ear and scolded him, emphasizing the importance of their training and catching up to Raoul's level. Jake realized his mistake and awkwardly laughed it off. Despite the suggestion of taking a break, Philip made it clear that they had more work to do, and he had no intention of slowing down their training just yet. Philip and Jake discussed their next steps after Raoul's impressive display of power and leveling up. Jake suggested contacting the family, as Count Melvin would likely be thrilled with Raoul's progress. However, Raoul decided to keep his achievements a secret between the two of them for the time being, and they both agreed to this plan. Raoul felt that he had hunted enough monsters and had leveled up sufficiently for now. Meanwhile, Philip scolded Jake for his choice of words, making Jake pout and ask for clarification. Raoul realized that he had set the bait for a plan, and was now waiting for the prey to take it. He instructed them to return, and they agreed, urging the Empire's dogs to move quickly in his mind. In the streets of Mera, a lady named Nakia, who was an alchemist, finished her day's work. She noticed that potions were becoming increasingly popular, and attributed it to the Ashton County's presence, as they brought monster byproducts, which she needed for her potions. She appreciated how the people from Ashton County checked on her well-being, and helped her acquire the necessary materials. Nakia found Raoul a bit strange, but was grateful to him for his assistance, even though he was 8 years younger and a noble. As Nakia returned home and called for her sister Nikki, she received no response. Worried, she called out again, but soon realized something that filled her with fear. She enters the room and spots a letter lying ominously on the bed, its edge pierced by a menacing knife. Trembling with fear, she takes a deep breath and carefully retrieves the letter, her hands shaking as she unfolds it. The words send a chill down her spine as it reveals the horrifying news that her little sister has been abducted. The letter warns her not to alert anyone and to await further instructions, causing tears to well up in her eyes. Her heart pounding, she whispers a desperate "No" under her breath. With her emotions in turmoil, she bolts out of the room, her sobs echoing through the corridor. She knows that if she steps outside the city, her sister Nikki's life will be in grave danger. She had heard countless rumors about kidnappings before, dismissed as baseless by the city government. Now she can't help but wonder where to turn for help. The thought lingers that the kidnappers might be watching her every move, and the city guards are unlikely to venture beyond the city walls, even if she were to report the abduction. Seeking aid from the Adventurers Guild would take precious time. She feels a sense of urgency pressing upon her. Suddenly, a memory surfaces. Raoul, a friend who had once advised her that if she ever found herself in dire straits, she should seek him out. With no other viable options, she dashes away, her determination driving her towards finding Raoul. Meanwhile, in an apartment elsewhere, a system alert blinks on Raoul's screen, signaling that Nakia is approaching. He knows that this moment was bound to come sooner or later. Swiftly, he issues orders to his team, ensuring they are ready for action. their focus locked on their designated targets. They respond with crisp affirmations. Raul accesses the Connect community, clicking on the link to the premium members-only information cafe he had established during his previous life as a star player. This cafe had transformed into a repository of hidden information and Connect knowledge, and Raul intended to harness it for his advantage. As he peruses the cafe, Raul realizes he has struck gold. It's a treasure trove of valuable information he can use to plan his next move. Determined to rely on concrete data rather than uncertain memories, he searches for the link to the Free City Mirror. The system reveals that the search result leads to a quest starting point at South Mira NPC. With confidence in his preparations, Raul receives a report from one of his men, confirming Nakia's approach. The question gnaws at him. Can he change Nakia's fate? Raul, though aware of Nakia's infamous reputation as the fearsome alchemist, blood-hungry witch, and taboo destroyer, knew that this desperate girl standing before him was different. He timidly instructed his men to treat her with utmost politeness. Nakia had gained notoriety for conducting ruthless experiments on humans as part of her vendetta against the Empire. Her chemical weapons primarily targeted the Empire, but innocent civilians often became unintended victims. With a gentle hand on Nakia's shoulder, Raul urged her to calm down and reassured her that Nikki would be safe. He promised his help and implored Nakia to share the details of what had transpired. Tearfully, Nakia confided in him, explaining that her sister had been abducted and Nikki should have returned home 2 hours ago under the care of their neighbor. She begged him to find her sister, blaming herself for the predicament. Raul comforted her and offered his solemn vow to locate Nikki. He believed he knew where to find her, leaving Nakia in shocked disbelief, fervently pleading for Nikki's rescue. He assured her that he would keep her informed as soon as he had any news, and requested that she stay put while Bernard, one of his companions, would assist her. Bernard graciously assured Nakia that she had made a wise choice, emphasizing that their young master always kept his promises. With this, they set out on their mission, and Philip, one of Raul's associates, reported that Pierce was tracking them, having obtained permission to operate from Mayor Raldo. Raul acknowledged the news and appreciated the support. The system indicated that the raid quest was Free City Mirror with a D-grade objective. The task involved defeating unknown rogues and an additional mission to rescue hostages and raid the hideouts in the forest. The quest description explained that an unidentified group of rogues was causing chaos in the forest near Mira City, interfering with trade and kidnapping. The rewards for successfully completing the quest were substantial, including experience points, coins, recognition from Mayor Raldo, and undisclosed items. Raul inquired if Philip had provided Mayor Raldo with the list of rogues. Philip replied that Raldo had mentioned rewarding them later, expressing surprise at the wealth of information they had provided, derived from Raul's informants and data accessed through the cafe link, a testament to the extensive resources they had already employed in their quest. With unwavering determination, Raul ensured that their plan had no weaknesses or gaps, meticulously checking every detail. He gave his final instructions to his men, and Jake, filled with excitement and determination, enthusiastically agreed to follow through on the mission. Unbeknownst to them, 2 figures were concealed in the thick bushes nearby, spying on their movements. In the dense forest, the rustling of leaves drew the attention of Pierce, Ashton County's Golden Bear Knights, and Raul's Guard Knights, alongside the rest of the Bear Knights. Pierce believed he had located their target, guided by the telltale signs on the forest floor. It was time to set their plan in motion. Leaping high into the trees, Pierce landed gracefully on a sturdy branch, ready to utilize the new skill he had acquired. Activating his detection skill, he meticulously scanned the forest surroundings. To his astonishment, he spotted hidden figures lurking nearby, armed with bows and arrows, surrounded by phantom magic circles and protective barriers. Recalling Raul's earlier instructions, Pierce knew he had to report this discovery immediately. He swiftly read Raul's message, estimating that they would arrive within the next 5 minutes. This prompted him to reminisce about the events of 5 months ago. Back then, Raul had been seen as the youngest son, perceived as weaker and less talented compared to his brothers. Many servants and knights were initially hesitant to join his cause, even when Raul sought volunteers. However, Raul personally visited the Knights' training ground, engaging in conversations with knights like Pierce. During one such conversation, Raul had mentioned his ability to help Pierce reach his true potential. Pierce, who had expressed a burning desire to surpass his current limits, had initially doubted whether someone as young as Raul could offer meaningful guidance. Nevertheless, he decided to give it a chance. As Raul took Pierce's sword and demonstrated his point, Pierce was astonished to find that every movement felt smoother and more efficient. Raul had emphasized the importance of refining his bow skills, recognizing Pierce's hidden talent in archery, a skill known to only a few. It made Pierce wonder if Raoul was the mentor he had been searching for all along. With newfound belief, he chose to follow Raoul, convinced that it was the best decision he had ever made. He couldn't help but think that those who had declined Raoul's offer were likely regretting their choice now. Pierce couldn't help but ponder why Raoul had concealed his true power for so long. Thanks to the skill books Raoul had provided, he had progressed to the high expert stage and had the opportunity to refine his other skills. It was clear that none of this would have been possible without Raoul's invaluable guidance. Pierce speculated that today might finally be the day when Raoul would reveal the extent of his true strength. As he kept an eye on the approaching figure, Pierce swiftly descended from the tree branch and, with a graceful bow, joined the other knights in respectfully announcing his arrival. His anticipation grew as he focused on the mission ahead. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at J0 Han Libert, who commented, "It's redo of Healer" on our Isekai Doctor video. Thanks for commenting. The system indicated that they had reached an unknown rogue's hideout with an undisclosed grade and size. Its status revealed the presence of a 3-circle or higher magic circle obstructing their vision, and another 3-circle magic that disrupted anyone attempting to approach. Pierce faced a critical decision. Should he attempt to dismantle the magic circle, or find an alternative way to gain entry and gather vital information? Noting the uniformity of hideouts across different cities and the lurking spies from the Cran and Empire, Pierce understood the unique challenges posed by these rogue elements. While most Connect players typically received quests in starting cities, such as Mia, that involved hunting monsters or rogues for rewards, there were rogue agents like the slave trader who kidnapped city residents and mercenaries striving for infamy. However, the most perilous adversaries were the spies from the Cran and Empire, known as the Imperial Hounds. They actively hunted players and employed blackmail to prevent them from uniting, making them a formidable threat, especially in the late game. Pierce was determined not to let them thrive. In a swift and well-coordinated move, Pierce contacted his fellow knights, who promptly aimed their arrows and unleashed a barrage that struck down the individuals concealed behind the magic circle. With the immediate vicinity cleared, he observed that there was no one near the entrance. Pierce considered dispelling the magic circle using a scroll he had acquired from a shop, but when he assessed the flow of mana, he hesitated. Doubts crept in as he wondered if he possessed the ability to do it himself. Resolving to take matters into his own hands, he retrieved his trusty dagger from his inventory. Focusing his energy, he launched it toward the mana flow, causing it to crack slowly under the force of his attack. Finally, he plunged his dagger into the ground, striking the magic circle with precision and shattering it to pieces. Pierce appreciated the cost-saving aspect of using his own abilities rather than purchasing scrolls. It was an expectation he had of their young master, Raoul. Following their pre-arranged plan, Pierce summoned Jackson and Nil and reminded them of their role in luring the enemy as previously discussed. He assured them that he would signal when it was time to strike, a plan they both readily agreed to. Descending from the tree branch and walking alongside his fellow knights, Pierce felt a surge of confidence. With elite knights by his side, he believed they could eliminate all threats. In his mind, they had a simple mission: hunt down every last one of them. When Jake questioned the need to use a rapier, Pierce explained that it was crucial to follow orders, even if it seemed unnecessary for their task. Jake accepted the directive and asked Pierce to watch their backs while he scouted the area to locate the kidnapped people, with a priority on rescuing Nakia's younger sister, Nikki. Pierce acknowledged the instructions and proceeded. Pierce then gathered Philip and used his psychokinesis to signal that they should approach and open the massive door ahead. The trio entered the tunnel together, and as Pierce glanced back at them, he subtly faded into the shadows. The system reported that Pierce had successfully infiltrated the enemy's base, prompting thoughts of initiating the hunt. Observing the surroundings, Pierce noted a high cave ceiling and wooden fences scattered about. The levels of the rogues present ranged from 30 to 31, not significantly different from typical thieves. Satisfied with his assessment of the base, Pierce raised his hand to signal Jake and Philip, indicating that he was ready to give the orders. Pierce instructed Jake to head left, Philip to proceed straight ahead, and he himself would go right. With clenched fists, they received their orders and swiftly moved in their designated directions. Pierce ascended the stairs rapidly, then leaped to the upper level, taking the men by surprise. In a flash, he threw his knives at their heads before landing on the stair handle. Without hesitation, he retrieved his bow and arrow, swiftly aiming and releasing the projectile to eliminate one of the men. Meanwhile, Philip was engaged in combat, slashing through the adversaries in the center. Jake was doing the same on the left. One of the rogues on the upper level spotted them and raised an alarm, alerting the others to the presence of intruders. As the alarm was raised, the man in charge ordered his guards to protect the fences and eliminate the intruders. He launched an arrow attack against Pierce, realizing that their numbers were growing and They were starting to block his arrows effectively. One of the rogues then instructed his companion to aim and shoot at Pierce, causing arrows to be fired in his direction. However, Pierce demonstrated his psychokinetic prowess by effortlessly halting the incoming arrows mid-flight. This unexpected display of power left one of the rogues panicking, speculating if Pierce had somehow deflected the arrows. The rogue urged his companion to fetch reinforcements from downstairs. The rogues hastily descended the stairs to confront Pierce, one of them shouting that arrows were ineffective against him and suggesting they should jump and attack him directly. Pierce stowed his bow, realizing he would need his daggers now. He drew them from their sheaths and held them poised for combat. As one of the rogues lunged at him, Pierce effortlessly pushed the man aside, sending him crashing into his comrades. This unexpected maneuver left the rogues bewildered. Pierce then employed his psychokinetic abilities, lifting the arrows scattered on the ground and positioning them around himself. With a surge of power, Pierce levitated into the air, wielding his daggers and surrounded by the floating arrows. This bewildered the rogues, one of whom questioned if it was magic and deemed it impossible. With deadly precision, Pierce aimed the arrows at the rogues below and released them simultaneously, striking down numerous adversaries. Surveying the chaotic scene below, Pierce acknowledged that it still wasn't powerful enough to penetrate their armor. He decided to descend, appearing above a rogue who was attempting to flee. Swiftly, he impaled the man with his rapier, wondering about the whereabouts of the remaining foes. Looking back, Pierce witnessed Philip and Jake dispatching the rogues efficiently. Some of the rogues cried out to their companions to run, fearing the presence of what they perceived as monsters. One desperate man begged for mercy upon seeing Jake wielding the rapier, but Jake coldly struck him down, emphasizing his aversion to using the weapon. However, he didn't consider the need to avoid leaving traces of swordsmanship. Much to Ashton's repeated warnings, Pierce's sharp senses detected someone sneaking up from behind, unaware that he was lurking nearby. In the nick of time, Pierce unleashed an arrow, striking down the would-be attacker and preventing him from launching a surprise attack on Jake. Pierce concluded that they were nearly finished dealing with the minor adversaries. What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.